Again, with the tens of you in here. How was lunch, everybody? Pretty good? There we go. All right, we're still alive. The post-lunch stupor is not fully in effect yet. All right, so just as a reminder to you, right now, if you are a graduate student, you have the opportunity to engage in the networking session over in 208 and 218. So you can go over there if you're a grad student and have your opportunity to network with somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 local, regional, and national representatives from different companies here in Tallahassee. While that's taking place, here in this room is our next guest speaker. So she is the founder and CEO of Smith Consulting. She was recently named one of the top 500 executives in Dallas by D Magazine and spent the early years of her career in entertainment marketing, including 6 years with the Walt Disney Company. After earning her MBA, she joined the San Diego Padres as Director of Brand Development, where she had oversight of all marketing and branding initiatives. Following her time in San Diego, she moved to Daytona Beach to drive NASCAR's effort to appeal to a younger and more diverse fan base as the Senior Director of Growth Segment Marketing. Later, she relocated to Dallas and led the marketing and fan experience as the CMO for Dallas-Fort Worth's WNBA franchise, before, of course, launching her consulting firm this year. She's originally from California, earned a bachelor's degree in communication studies at UCLA, and a master's degree in business administration at the University of Michigan. She currently holds a seat on the Michigan Ross Alumni Board of Governors and is a passionate supporter of the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society. She's not as big a deal as her idol Britney Spears, but I'm sure when she comes up here, she will rock the stage just like Britney will. Please welcome Nicole Smith.
Yeah, I've made a bet if you can get Britney Spears into my bio or not. So success. One thing is going right today. Well, maybe two things are going right today. Well, welcome to everyone who made it back from lunch. I am the lucky speaker that gets to keep you awake after lunch. So we're all in this together, right? So yes, thanks for that great introduction. I am born and raised in California. I'm a UCLA Bruin and a Michigan Wolverine. Don't hold that against me. But over the last 20 years, I've basically held a lot of marketing roles in sports and entertainment. And I've done everything from being an intern to being a chief marketing officer, so to now being a business owner. So I'm sure when we get to the point where we start having Q&A, there's probably very little I haven't seen. So I'm here to help you guys today. I've spent my entire professional career in entertainment and sports, working for consumer brands and some nonprofits, specializing in brand marketing and growing brands through integrated marketing and strategic partnerships. I've worked exclusively in sports for the last 8 years, so that began with actually an internship with the Detroit Pistons while I was in Michigan. Yes, even as a grad student doing internships, that's important too. And then I left and joined the San Diego Padres, and so there I led their marketing team. That was actually kind of interesting because I came in as director and I had a great SVP ahead of me who I thought I was going to learn a lot from, and after 3 months she was gone and I was in charge. So, hey, welcome learning curve, right? So sometimes we learn a little faster than we want to. And then after leaving San Diego, I went on to NASCAR, so I was here in Florida, not too far from you guys, where I helped them build new audiences and build their growth initiatives, particularly around youth and particularly around the Hispanic market, which we all know NASCAR needs to grow a little bit. And so that was a challenging role, but a really, really great one. And then after that, I moved to Dallas, where I was the chief marketing officer for the WNBA's Dallas Wings. It was a brand new WNBA franchise. And it's very unlikely in your career that you get the opportunity to start a franchise from scratch. So it was a great opportunity for me, so I didn't want to miss it. And it was great helping them get started in a new market, especially a big sports market like Dallas. And then, let's see, that's 8 years, 4 states and 5 cities, and that brings me to where I am now, which is the owner of my own company, like you heard, Smith Consulting, where I help businesses improve their brand and their consumer-facing communications as a consultant. I help people improve their lives and reach their goals as a coach, and then I help people create amazing events and drive home key messages as a professional speaker. But today, I'm going to share with you what I've learned throughout my career with the specific intention of being helpful, right? I can come here and tell you everything about me, but if I don't help you get where you need to be, then I don't think that I wasn't successful. So let's try to do that today. So simply put, I'm a person that helps people reach their goals. So today, let me try to help you reach your goal, which I'm going to guess is probably job in sports, right? All right. So let's get the basics out of the way. I'm sure you guys already know you've got a great networking fair going on here. You have a wonderful program that you're a part of. That, you know, one of the first things that you've got to do is get your personal marketing stuff together, right? And so, you know, use me as a resource. I think some of you people have probably already reached out on LinkedIn and was like, hey, I'd love to add you to my LinkedIn network. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you would. I don't know you yet. So let's get to know each other a little bit today. But just a tip for you guys. If you don't have a resume that you feel really good about, there's still time to create that document. If you don't think it reflects your best professional self, right? And that's really important to remember, your best professional self. Because this resume is a document that sometimes gets presented without you being in the room, right? So it's got to tell your story and it's got to represent you without you being there. If you don't feel like you have that yet, there's still time to create it. And one of the things that I tell people if they're trying to create one is to look for job descriptions of the job that you would want, that you ultimately want, right? And then look at what they're asking for. And then go back and look at your document and figure out, do I have what they're looking for in this role? And if I do, is it highlighted and easy to find? And if I don't, what's my plan for getting it? Because I hear a lot of people tell me, they're like, well, I need experience to get these jobs, and I have a job that needs experience. But what I want to tell you is that the experience is out there. And sometimes you can create it yourself. And then when we get to Q&A and things like that, if you have specific questions, I'm more than happy to help out where that's concerned. But just know that you can create a narrative for yourself that will definitely help you get that job. Then also, also thinking about your LinkedIn, because like I mentioned, people had reached out to me on LinkedIn. Make sure that that is also, you know, in a place where you feel really good about it. And again, it's the same thing. And it's your opportunity to share more about yourself and use those networks, right? So like if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm giving you essentially access to everybody that I know. And then you get access to everybody that they know. So I have to see a compelling case for why I'm gonna offer you that access, right? And so make sure that, again, it's your best professional self. And so of course, you know, mentioning LinkedIn, I didn't mention other social media channels, but I'll go really quickly. As a hiring manager, it's super important for me to let you guys know that what you don't want to be found on social media will be found. So just know that now. And I'm sure you guys have heard that plenty, right? I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but if you haven't taken that seriously, I really want you to take it seriously. And if you don't believe me, here's like a little cautionary tale. So we employ, like different employers that I've had, we actually employ companies that's what they do. They scour the internet and they look for embarrassing things before they can embarrass the company. Okay? So know that there are actual companies, people, bots, technology that are doing that on the company's behalf. So make sure that you do it first. There's a couple things. So there are people who haven't been drafted for our teams because of things on the internet. There's actually time for people it's not their fault, right? Somebody else wrote something or created something. We had an incident like that when I was in San Diego. And so if you have things like that, it's important to be honest about them. Do your best to fix them, but don't shy away from admitting and letting people know, because it can get in the way of you advancing in the future. So, now that you got your personal marketing materials together, like I said, that's probably nothing new, and you're feeling really good about them, let's get on to like the really good stuff, which is the actual time to get a job. So, do y'all know like how many, on average, like in any industry, how many responses people get to a job description? Like you post a job, how many people actually apply? It's about 200, and that's the average. And so as a hiring manager, what I've seen is I can post a job for especially something entry level, like a coordinator or an assistant, and I can get 100 responses in a day. And that's a lot. It's a lot because it's usually on me to like look through them all and kind of decide. So how do you stand out in that kind of scenario, right? Because that's what you would be thinking. And so lucky for you, I'm here with you today to tell you exactly a couple ways that I think you can probably stand out. So first things first. Don't think, some people hear that number and they're like, oh my gosh, there's like 200 people and I'm competing against these 200 people. I'm going to dispel the myth about competition. Because I can tell you from vast experience that probably 198 of them are not competitive. Maybe not 198, but a good vast majority of them are not competitive. What happens is there's just a lot of volume. So what you want to make sure is that you actually do stand out. So the number one way to stand out in all of those people to actually be able to do the job, right? To have that great experience, know that you can do the job, and communicate very well that you can do that job. So through what you're doing today, the programs you're involved in, the internships that you've done. Make sure that you're getting practical experience and that you've already sat down, taken the time to create a narrative that you can quickly convey, whether it's in a cover letter, in person on a phone screener, or in your resume, that tells me that you can do this job. Because that's a lifesaver. And so many people miss that really small, fundamental piece. So make sure you're not missing that. The second thing you can do to stand out is know why you want the job. Now, again, probably something you've heard plenty of times before, but some people don't know why they want the job other than, well, I just really want to work for this team, or I just really want to work in sports. It's got to be better than that, guys. Like, that's not enough, you know? We've got enough fans. I need somebody who can solve the problem. So for me, for example, I'm going to give you a great example of mine. I love creating experiences, right? I love developing and creating experiences. I love giving people the opportunity to create memories and have things that will never be recreated and will also never be forgotten. That's why I love what I do, and that's why I choose the jobs that I choose, because they allow me to do that. And they allow me to do it in a sports context, right? I could go work at a consumer packaged goods company, but I've never seen 100,000 people get together to open a box of Cheerios, okay? But I have seen 100,000 people get together for a sporting event, so that's the difference. And you have to know what your difference is. And make sure it's yours, right? Authenticity comes through, right? When you're genuine, that comes through. That's what we want to see. People want to see you. So think about that and give yourself some time to really come up with what that is. Then the next thing is, show that you want the job before you get in the room. So I'll tell you how I got my first job in sports, which is actually a really interesting story. So when I came into business school, I wasn't thinking I wanted to do sports. I worked in entertainment for a really long time, including my time at the Walt Disney Company, and had a lot of fun. Everything was really great, and I wanted to be a very serious businesswoman. I was going to go work in a brand marketing role and do all kinds of charts and amazing graphs and just be awesome, right? But then I quickly realized that that kind of wasn't me. I don't know if you noticed, I'm kind of not the stuffy, stumpy type. And that if I had this opportunity and I could do anything in the world that I wanted to do, what did I want to do? Well, I wanted to work in sports, so I said, okay, I'm going to do that. And so I set about doing the work of making sure that I wasn't only talking about wanting to work in sports, but that I was showing and demonstrating that I wanted to work in sports. So y'all have taken a major step, right? By even being in this program and being a part of this program and participating in conferences like this, you are showing that you want to do it. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's so many people who say, I want to work in sports, I would love to work in sports, I want that sports job, and they never do anything about it, right? So wanting it is not enough. You have to seek out the opportunities, and you have to convert opportunities that may not seem like they're opportunities into one. So I mentioned earlier that I interned with the Detroit Pistons. So here I am. I mean, I have loads of work experience, right? I left the Walt Disney Company, I was in a manager role, so there's no reason for me to go and say, hey, I'll work for free as an intern. But what was really important for me was to, A, be in the environment and say, okay, let me understand what's going on, let me understand what the problems are in the industry firsthand, and then let me get a sense of if this environment really works for me. And I had a lot of classmates that were like, oh, that's cool, you've got that internship, how much does it pay? And I was like, it's free 99, like nothing, like nothing. And I'm driving, anybody here from or familiar with Michigan or like Detroit metro area? Yay, you got one, okay. So I'm driving from Ann Arbor to the Palace in Auburn Hills. Let's just set the picture, right? I'm a California girl, so I am what I am. I've got a car with rear-wheel drive, if anybody's familiar with that, and it snows in Michigan if you haven't heard. And this was in like the late fall, early winter. So this is me, risking life and limb, literally, driving north into Michigan to go get this experience. And let me tell you, some days were a little rigorous because I could provide extra value and participate in a way that maybe others couldn't. But there were days, quite frankly, y'all, I was passing out promotional stuff on the concourse, right? But it's all about what you make of those opportunities. And so this is a great transition to what happened next. Every college has it, the dog and pony show with alumni. I am part of alumni board of governors, so now I get to be the pony. It's awesome. So they bring you out, they let you talk to people, they make you feel really important. So they brought out an alum, and his name was Tom Garfinkel, and at the time he was the chief operating officer for the San Diego Padres. He's now, FYI, if anybody's familiar with that name, he's now the president of the Miami Dolphins. But that was before he got big time. So he came and I went to his talk. Can't tell you what he really talked about, probably himself. And then after, I just approached him and said, hey, I really enjoyed what you talked about, and your career is one that I personally would like to emulate. You know, if you have any tips or any information for me that would be helpful as I try to find my next career in sports, please do let me know. He's like, oh, great, what do you do? I said, well, I'm in marketing, you know, explain to him kind of my background. He's like, oh, that's awesome. Email me your resume. I said, oh, okay, great, nice to meet you, thanks. And I did, I followed up, I did what I needed to do. That was in November. So, school's like trudging along. I still don't have a job. Graduation's around the corner. I still don't have a job. And I'm sitting there on a March afternoon, March, and I get an email from Tom Garfinkel that says, are you still looking for a job? That's all it said. And I was like, you know, you have that moment of like, how do I respond? The answer is yes. But do I respond with a good thing? What do I do, right? We all do that, which is absolutely crazy because of course you just write back, yes, right? Yes, I am, you know, here's my updated resume, you know, what have you. And he wrote back, okay, someone will be in touch. What? So yeah, someone was in touch. And I ended up flying out to San Diego the next week. It was a little bit of a blind interview. They didn't know what they wanted to do, what the position was, but they flew me out and I had a job offer the very next week. From a brief interaction that happened in November. And that kicked off my entire career of being in sports. So a couple things to take away from that is, it started from action, right? Being able to go up to him and say, hey, your career is one that I admire. I would like to do something like that. I had action to show him that I was taking of what I was doing. Yeah, I'm interning right now. Not only, you know, my past experience, but I'm interning right now. Showing him that I was serious about it, this is what I'm doing, right? And then doing the follow-up, getting that to him. And then being ready and being prepared and having my personal marketing materials all ready to go when I got that random email in March, because opportunities just don't come at career fairs or when you're expecting them or when you've initiated contact. They can come at any time. And so we've got to be ready to take advantage of those when they do come. So that's one time I was actually ready. I won't tell you about times when I wasn't. But that also leads to my next point, which is building strong relationships, right? So, you know, that relationship with Tom, I don't think you can file that under particularly strong, but it's the idea that I initiated contact, right? And spoke to him and told him what I wanted. How many times have we not told people what we wanted? Or we think it doesn't matter what we want. You have to let people know what you want. Because if he didn't know that I wanted a job, or that I was looking for a job, perhaps I would have never gotten that email. So it's really important that you're telling people what you want. I call it, you know, there's a process I call building your board of directors, right? So we all have people in our lives that do things for us. There are people who support us when we need it. They're kind of like the batteries in the back kind of people, I call them. Get your Energizer Bunny going. There are those people who do things that you don't do, or do things better than you do them. So like if you're not a great proofreader, you need to have one in your life, right? I even now today have a really close friend and I love her to death. I call her my favorite proposal reviewer. I hype her up about it. I get really excited about it because believe me, as a business owner, my proposals are super important. That's how I make my money. But I don't trust my set of eyes to them. I send them to her, my favorite proposal reader, that's how I title the emails, by the way. Hey, my favorite proposal reader. To make sure that, you know, I have a second set of eyes. But it's really important to start to have people around you, and I'm not saying use people. I'm just saying recognize the skills that your friends and your colleagues have and how you guys can help each other. Because I'm sure there are people already in your life that do things really well that you don't, and you need to be able to ask for help, which is really the next point. Don't be afraid to ask for help, okay? Nobody's judging you on help. You'll be judged on not asking for help more so than asking for help. And that's a lesson I had to learn the hard way. Because in your mind, you're like, no, I got it. I can take care of it. I don't want anybody to know that I don't have it all together. Newsflash. No one has it all together. I can tell you that from experience. I can tell you that every day. And after I leave, you can talk to Hunter and he'll tell you all about how I don't have it all together. But yes, so as far as building your board directors, you want to make sure that there's people who give you feedback that you need, people who are good at things that you're not good at, and people who can support you when you need it. And just remember that it goes both ways, right? So think about what you can do and how you can offer help and what you're good at and what you can do for others. the networking thing is a little tough, right? I'm not a natural networker. I don't know very many people who are, maybe like a couple, but for most of us it's a little awkward. And so what I would say to people who feel a little awkward about networking is A, you're not alone. I think most people do. B, just remember, you're not gonna die. What's the worst thing that happens is that you're just bad at it. And that's okay, because that means you have an opportunity to get better. But the other thing that you have to remember is that those relationships are so important. And a lot of times we talk about networking up and meeting people who are in roles you want to be in. I'm a big proponent, and I strongly suggest networking up, of course, but also networking laterally, right? Because your peers and your colleagues, those are the people who are going to have those jobs, you know, in a couple years. Like maybe you're going into a job you really like now, but in 3 years you might be 2 years less time. You might be in a place where you want to change or do something different. Those are the people who you're going to know and who are going to help you. And just remember, in this industry, it's really small. I was realizing today, just in telling stories, like how small it can be. But for example, when I got my job in San Diego, it was really around me knowing people who had worked with me in San Diego. When I got my job in Dallas, people who had worked with me in San Diego, who had then gone on to do other jobs, and then they were in a position to recommend me or hire me for the job I got there. So that's actually a fun story, kind of. I had decided I was moving to Dallas. Sorry, Florida, we had to break up. But I decided I was moving to Dallas. And I had bought a home, so I was there closing on my house. And I had a couple friends who were in town doing consulting engagements for the NBA. Like, hey, let's get together for lunch. I haven't seen you in forever. I hadn't seen them since I was working in San Diego. And they were like, yeah, let's have lunch. And there's two guys, and the day before the lunch, one guy was like, gotta go back to New York. Joe's good, you can still meet with Joe. Day of, Joe's like, I got a sales call, I can't. And I'm like, you guys are the worst. But he was like, you know what, there's a couple guys down here that I think you should probably meet with just to know them since you're gonna be in Dallas now. So come on down, meet with them, we'll catch up after. I'll probably be back for my sales call. I'm like, okay, fine. So I go, I meet with these people. We sit down, we have a chat, they're asking me about my background, telling them a little bit, they're telling me a little bit about the team. So, you know, I had my personal marketing materials ready. So I didn't have a leave behind, because hey, you never know. And I walked away from it feeling really good that I had just met some great people and I was moving to Dallas and maybe I had some contacts. That was on a Wednesday. Thursday afternoon, I was doing good. I was in Nebraska Furniture Mart. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. I was buying a washer and a dryer. Real sexy stuff. And I'm like there buying a washer and dryer back at Life. And my phone rings and I answer it. And it's like, hey Nicole, you know, it's Jerry from blah, blah. And I'm like, hey Jerry, how's it going? He's like, yeah. He's like, we really enjoyed our conversation yesterday. I was like, yeah, me too. It was great. He's like, yeah, wondering if you want to lead our marketing team. Oh. And I'm like, washer, dryer, job offer. I'm not sure what's happening here. But again, right? Relationships, people you know, people you get introduced to. I was not expecting that. I wasn't even technically applying for that, right? But again, you never know. So you've always got to be ready. You've always got to have things together and remember to build those relationships. So you can kind of see a theme forming now, right? Like about what's really propelled my career forward. And I say this in all sincerity, I'm not special, okay? I didn't do anything particularly special to, you know, that anybody else couldn't do. I think the difference between people who succeed and people who don't is some of it is a little bit of luck and a little bit of opportunity, and what's meant for you will be yours. But a lot of it is just doing the work and being prepared. And having people understand that they can depend on you and that you are going to do good work and that you know how to do the work. So at the end of the day, that's what people need. So that's the power of networking. Here's a couple more tips about networking, since y'all been doing that a lot today, probably exhausted. If there's any introverts in the room like me, after talking to people all day, you're like, I just want to be by myself. And I want nobody to talk to me for like 3 days. But here's a couple things. Keep those contacts warm, right? That doesn't mean calling somebody every day. That doesn't mean like, hey, how's your weekend? But if you see like something, you know, LinkedIn lets you know they're in the news, or you see something interesting, keep them warm. Remember key dates. Talk to people. Don't be the person that just shows up when you need something, okay? Now, that happens, right? Sometimes you have to be that guy or that girl that's like, hey, I haven't talked to you in 5 years and I have something that I need. And that happens and people understand. But as much as you can avoid that, try to. People really appreciate just saying hello, right? Asking how things are going. And then again, like I said before, remember that it goes both ways. So, one of the things I think about networking too that I think a lot of students forget, and I try to drive this home as much as possible, is how powerful you really are. Sometimes when you're a student, you feel like you're on the side of the table that is less powerful. Like you're waiting for someone to pick you, or you're waiting for something to happen to you. And so what I want to tell you is that you're more powerful than you think, okay? And that is the honest truth. I wouldn't lie to you. I don't make a practice of doing that. And let me tell you why you're powerful. Because you have people who understand where you are, who have been where you are, and that want to help you. So as a student, you can call on people and say, I just want to learn. I just want to know more about what you do. I just want to know more about your company. And that's a rare position to be in. So take advantage of that as a way to build your network and to get closer to the goal that you have. If you know people who have the job that you want, reach out to them. Say, you have a role, you're doing a role that I want to do one day, and I just want to understand, what's your day-to-day like? How'd you get into that place? That's something that you can do, and you should feel empowered to do that. Don't feel like you're at a disadvantage and you have to wait for permission. You don't need permission to ask questions. Ask as many questions as you need to of as many people as you can. And then also know that your story matters. Sometimes people are kind of like, well, it's not about me, it's more about them. But I think that's how you connect to people. So to be able to find something in common, look, alumni, people who grew up in your same hometown, people who have similar hobbies as you, people who went to your elementary school, find them, right? Find commonality, and I think for those of us who are awkward and who are not as comfortable with networking, I think that's one of the really great ways to kind of make that a little bit smoother. Look, it's never gonna be a cakewalk, I don't think. I've been doing it for a really long time, and I'm still kind of like, really? Do I have to? But it's something that the more you do it, definitely the easier it gets. And at the end of the day, it's like I always say, ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen? And that's probably not happening, so you can move on. So, if you do all these things, and you're kind of wonderful, you may end up getting in front of a hiring manager, which in some cases could have or would be me. And so, when I'm looking for people that I'm going to hire, there's a couple things that I look for. And I'll try to go through it really quickly, so I think we're running out of time. Know that the hiring manager has a problem that they're trying to solve, right? I want you to be good. I need you to be good, right? Because as soon as I find that good person, I can stop looking and get back to work and get back to my job. So know that going into those situations, people want you to be successful. They want you to be good. So don't be afraid that you're going to be judged or rejected. What I used to tell my staff all the time is like, I get paid a lot of money to tell you no. Please don't take that away from me. So don't tell yourself no. Let somebody else do that. That's one thing you can check off your list, right? You're not responsible for turning yourself down, so put yourself out there. And know that we're looking for you. We need you. We need you to be good. There's a couple people that I've hired over time that I just want to chat about really quickly. One, I'll tell you, it was an intern. And the thing that really stood out to me, and I like to talk about him because he's gone on to be very successful, and I like to credit myself with finding him. The one thing that stood out to me in his interview, and he was on a panel interview with a number of people, was that he was so comfortable with himself, and he was completely himself. He was a little dorky, he was a little goofy, but he wasn't like, apologetic about it. He just was who he was, and he knew why he wanted to do the job, and I could tell that he was going to be super excited about it. And I was like, that's the kind of energy I want in my team. And when I tell you he came in and he killed it, I gave him some responsibility, slowly but surely, and he owned it. He eventually owned college night at the ballpark, and I'm sure he's still part of his glory days. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a picture on his desk about it. But he's gone on to have great jobs at Edelman. He now works for Omaze. I'm not sure if you guys know what that is, but Omaze is a company that uses sports and entertainment properties to help nonprofits fundraise. And they do a really great job of it. And so, recently he called me and he says, hey, I'm applying for a job and somebody in your LinkedIn network works there. And I'm like, well, who is it? Like, what is it? And he's like, oh yeah, the guy who founded the company, you guys are connected on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh yeah, that guy. We took a calculus class together at UCLA Extension. I know who you're talking about. Like, really random. Not somebody I met at, some high-powered job or anything like that. The guy in my calculus class, y'all, is like running a company that my intern, who's now getting to a manager position or something, is calling me for. So again, going back to what we've been talking about, that recurring theme of like keeping your network going, making sure you're ready. He's like, can you give him a call? I was like, I can, but I wasn't really great in that calculus class, so I don't know how much this is gonna help you. More of a communicator than a mathematician. Needless to say, he did get that job, but that was all him, that was not me. But it's just to say, you know, first of all, I'm convinced that I'm gonna work for him one day, and quite frankly, I'm probably gonna work for one of you guys one day, so that's why I come and do this and hope that you like me, because one day, you know, I may be sitting in front of you. But it's one of those things where you just never know. So keep that in mind. And I'm sure he didn't know when he came to that first internship interview, I'm sure he had no idea where his career would go. And I mean, I think he would say the same thing, but I think it's going really well. And I take total and complete credit. And so, you know, that is one of the things. So like, we quickly like go through it, right? You've got your personal marketing materials ready, right? You've got all your profiles and everything cleaned up. You are feeling confident in networking, understanding that you're not gonna die, everything's gonna be okay, and people are rooting for you, okay? It's a positive environment. People want you to be good. So feel good going into it. You're gonna keep those networks warm, you're gonna be kind to each other and everybody, because you never know, right? And you're always gonna be ready for opportunities. Now you can do all of that, right? And still things may not go the way you want. So that's where I'm gonna end here, is that sometimes things just don't go the way you want, even if you've done everything perfectly. So when you have those moments, I'm gonna say, again, ask for help. We talked about that already. Make sure that you're doing that. And then don't be afraid to create your own path. This is a whole nother talk, and I say that genuinely because I actually did this whole other talk somewhere else. Technology is an amazing thing, and it gives you opportunity to create your own paths. So for those of you in here who have an entrepreneurial streak or an entrepreneurial spirit, follow that. You live in an era where starting a company is so easy. And if anybody wants to know how, you can follow up with me. But I started I'll call it a sports apparel company in 16 hours one day, and I was asleep for about 7 of them. So it can be done. And I've spoke with and mentored young people who are still in undergrad that are starting their own companies, whether they're, you know, fan apparel, fan accessories, things like that. It's possible. So if you have those thoughts or you have that inclination, don't be afraid to choose your own path. There may be a reason why the path that you're taking isn't working, and you may need to do a different one. But most of all, with everything, just don't give up, right? Sometimes it's gonna be hard, but I need you. We all need you. The industry needs you. There are fans, there are teams, there are athletes, there are sponsors, and they're all counting on you guys, right? They need the new ideas. They need the fresh thinking. Trust me, they need the fresh thinking. They need those fantastic ideas that you come up with when you're chatting with your friends or when you're laying in bed at night. They need that. They need you. So, you know, when things get a little tough or you think maybe it's not working out, just hang in there, because you all have something to offer. You all have something to give. And the industry won't be at its full potential if they don't have you to give that. Right? So I think with that, I think it's time for questions.
How would you compare that to basically creating your own business? Is it similar? Are there any things that help you with the
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, sports franchises, pro sports franchises are essentially at the end of the day small businesses, small to mid-sized businesses, right? So working in a franchise that's that small, that's that intimate in its startup phase is very helpful. Like, you see the inner workings of the business. I mean, they kind of had a couple rounds, but at the time when I was brought in, I was the only executive level person on the business operations side of the company. So we went through the process of hiring, you know, finance and sponsorship and everything. And how do you build a team? Or how do you not build a team, right? Learning from our successes as well as our failures. It was a great learning experience. However, I will say, like, starting your own company is, you know, people can tell you how it'll be, but until you do it, you're like, uh-oh, right? It's a lot of responsibility. It's all on you. So I don't have the safety net or, you know, owners in Oklahoma, people infusing cash, like that kind of thing. So it's a lot more responsibility. But I will say this, like, I love all the work that I've done, and I've been able to do some pretty amazing things. But I tell people all the time, my worst day as an entrepreneur working for myself and being able to work on projects that I really care about and work with people that I really enjoy and having that responsibility is better than my best day at most any other job that I've had. But I'll also say that without those jobs that I had, I don't think I would be as prepared. And I learn something every day, you know, as far as running my own business. Right now, you know, I'm so small, I do a lot myself. And so, like I was saying the other day, I was up till 4 a.m., hopefully you can't tell. I was up till 4 a.m. because things needed to get done, right? So I'm the one that does them. But there's also like an exhilarating quality to that. But I will tell you, entrepreneurship is hard. It is hard, but it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth it. So the question is, now that I've stepped outside of being in a sports franchise, what problems do I see from this new perspective? I think the problems are still, we'll call them challenges. The challenges are still the same, right? And the challenges usually, from my point of view, being a marketer, derive from like business operations and the interdependency of all the departments. So when you're in marketing, you know, you spend money. Now, I also believe that marketing generates money. I know that's the case. I can prove it. But in a lot of organizations, you know, you're basically labeled as the group that spends money because you do have a large cash outlay. Just as a side note, anybody who's thinking about going into sports marketing and the marketing piece, it is really important to be able to evaluate your work and tie it to the bottom line. Because the truth of the matter is, if your work isn't driving revenue, whether directly or indirectly, then you're really just doing arts and crafts. And I say that all the time, and that's what I tell people all the time. If you're not making money, then you're at recess. So you've got to connect it to the bottom line. But outside of that, you know, marketing doesn't have the budget, right? There's all these things that need to get done, you want to get done, but you don't control the revenue or the budget to like pay for yourself, right? So then you're looking at sponsorship, like, okay, well, sponsorship, we need you to sell, or we need to sell this asset so that we can actually execute it. And sponsorship's like, okay, that's fine, but I need butts and seats and I need to generate traffic, so they're looking at sales to do this, and then sales is looking at marketing, like, we don't have good marketing, so we can't sell. Right? There's this really, really circular logic that happens, and building a team where those three things work really closely together, and your chief revenue officer and your COO or your CMO are all very linked and working well together and incented in ways where collaboration makes sense, is a rarity. So you have to kind of rise above the everyday and look at the big picture, and I think it works better. When I've been in environments where we rise above and, you know, work together and everybody can understand the interdependency, then I think everybody does well. But when I've been in environments where everybody's just worried about their piece, I think it's very difficult and incredibly challenging, and I find that those teams are not as successful.
I know you talk about networking being successful, but I've never been the type to just start a conversation and then flee sometimes when I'm in it. So my advice is, if you don't know what you want to do in the industry, how do you go about finding where you fit in?
Well, you gotta do a lot of research, right? And unfortunately, finding means talking to people. But talking to people doesn't mean the same thing all the time, right? So maybe talking to people in a big room with a lot of people and people kind of jockeying position is not right for you, right? So you've got to find ways to get people one-on-one, maybe reach out to people. So start with a short list, right? Because otherwise it's really overwhelming. So maybe you don't know exactly what job you want to do, and that's actually difficult because sometimes we don't know what jobs are even available. You would be surprised what people get paid to do, right? But think about what you want your day-to-day to look like. What do you enjoy doing? If money was no object, what would you do every day, right? Where would you be? What kind of companies do you like? Start to understand you and what you want and match that to the companies that you want to go after. Because that's an easier way, because then once you understand what you want, you understand that that company has what you want, that's a much easier conversation to have, right? And then you'll have very specific questions that you can then go to them and ask. Look, people love to talk about themselves. They really do. Even people who are a little bit shy like to talk about themselves. And people who genuinely love their work like to talk about their work. So if you reach out to someone and say, hey, I just want to learn more about what you do. You could even say, I'm exploring careers and your job description looks really interesting to me. Would you mind spending just a few moments and explaining to me what you do and how you got there? And that's a really simple way to like get connected with someone. I also highly recommend like getting into groups, whether they're Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, or actual live groups, because sometimes in a group setting, someone will ask that question that you don't want to. And you can kind of get an entry point there, but sometimes it also allows you to be in a safer environment where you have support and people who are also encouraging you to get over that hurdle, to like reach out and talk to people. You're welcome. Okay. Any more burning questions? Something that you just can't wait to know, that you have to know? Is Michigan going to beat Ohio State? Probably not. Who would I root for in a Rose Bowl if UCLA with Michigan, UCLA? Let's see what else. Very important stuff here, guys. Oh, we got one last one.
What would you say like is like your favorite sport?
Say that again. My greatest.
What would you say like is your favorite sport?
My favorite sport?
Like work with?
Oh gosh. This might be a shocker. NASCAR. And I'll tell you why. NASCAR is exciting. And I really like the reaction people give when I'm like, I work for NASCAR. They're like, what? Right? And it's been really interesting, like living in Texas, and people are like, you work for NASCAR? And you wouldn't believe the conversations I get into and the people I meet, and then I surprise myself because I start talking about things that I know, like drag and drafting and race teams and all this kind of stuff. And I think it's a really good example for me, because I didn't want to work at NASCAR. I had preconceived notions. I had been a couple people had said to me, hey, there's some great roles at NASCAR, would you be interested? And I was like, nah. Like no. And then there was a role in a team put together that looked really interesting, and I said, okay, you know what, I'll go. And I met the team and wonderful people, and I ended up working with some incredible talent and learning something that I never thought I would learn, and really understanding motorsports and understanding, that it's bigger than just driving in a circle. And once you understand the strategy, and I find myself trying to convince people that they too could like NASCAR. And NASCAR has unprecedented fan access, right? Like seriously, I don't even let people touch my car, much less this like very expensive like race car that like your livelihood is dependent on. But it's a completely different animal. It's something I never saw myself doing. So I would say of all the sports that I've worked in, NASCAR has been my favorite. Yeah, definitely my favorite. If you've never been at a speedway or a super speedway and felt like that car vibration, like when all the engines turn on and it kind of like, your ears ring after a few hours, but those first 10 minutes, those first 10 minutes are pretty exhilarating. All right, friends, well, that looks like all the questions, I think. So for those of you who are thinking about reaching out and connecting with me on LinkedIn, I absolutely welcome it. Feel free to do it. Just make sure you leave a little note, tell me a little something about yourself, and make sure I know that you're prepared and ready, and how I can help and support you guys in reaching your goals. Okay? All right. Thank you.